taking the time out of your day to come talk. Appreciate it. Especially Frying Tiger, because I know he's probably a very busy person.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the topic of discussion is going to be American tanks, or just American armor, Germans, Patton, Pershing. I'll have a squad going in the background. Hop in and play and talk, or if you. Hey. So first, right. I guess introduction should be the starter. So, I'd like to go first.
Not everybody at the same time. Well, I'm gonna start.
That's exactly how the first podcast went. It was really awkward silent for a moment.
Yeah, well.
Alright.
So, yeah, my nick is Rapitor. My name is Quentin. And I'm a senior technical moderator for Gaijin and War Thunder. And I will be spreading some technical blocks today for the fun of it. So that's why I'm technical moderator in the first place.
What about you, Tigerfrost?
I am just Tigerfrost. I make YouTube videos. That's about the extent of my special abilities.
I also see you have a top tier waifu as your profile pic.
Absolutely.
He's a mad icon. You have my respect for not shitting on a SAO. And then it's Frying Tiger.
Yeah, I'm the U.S. National Coordinator for Gaijin, which basically means I do a little bit of everything when it comes to the North American community, Canada. I work with all the teams, the technical moderators, the suggestion people, down to the GMs. Basically, the same thing a community manager does. Keith, Stona, all those guys. Social media teams. I'm also one of the elusive masters of the secret documents. I pass a lot of those on, which is why I work with the tech mods, because every time they need to locate something to help with one of the tech reports or bug reports in the forums that players are missing, oftentimes I have it. I assisted with building a big research library for Gaijin early on in development. So I have a lot of that stuff, just here kind of laying around. And other than that, I translate a lot of things, a lot of publications, a lot of things like that. And people that read the news probably know that from time to time they ask me to do strange things like travel to museums to measure tanks and take lots of pictures and things like that too.
I wish I had a job like that, getting to travel to different pictures.
Well, sometimes it's actually quite fun. I mean, well, obviously it's fun to do stuff like that too, but like I've got to go to E3. I've been to PAX. I legitimately got paid to play video games and go to an open bar press event at the USS Intrepid in New York, and hang out with guys from Microsoft and everything else at a press event for Thrustmaster when they released their latest like joysticks. They invited us and a couple other video game people to just sit down and play video games with a bunch of people. It was pretty cool.
That sounds damn cool. I remember we had Scarper on recently, and he was also talking about how he was picked up by Gaijin, and he was offered to play video games for cash, and I said the exact same thing to him. It's such a nice thing being able to get paid to play video games.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Is your podcast rated for young people or not?
Yes, it is. I mean,
okay, I'm gonna refrain myself from making jokes about sitting all day and having some medical issues.
Well, not necessarily. It just for public reason, it's probably best to
Yeah, it's
do
fine.
it that way, but we don't mind it here. We're all grown men. Oh, and okay, he's back. It's fine.
Oops.
It's alright. So for those who don't know, I'm Collusion. I did a War Thunder Game Master. I do moderation stuff on Twitch and YouTube for Fly. I am also a helper for the Anime Man, and I do just whatever I can around the War Thunder community to try and be helpful. But yeah, that's me, and I think to start the the discussion off with a funky kind of thing. If I could give you all a magic wand and get one superpower from you, what would you give me? This is
Well,
it can be any superpower. Keep that in mind.
I say speed.
Speed. Gotta be fast.
Well, you said speed, and the answer was late. Yeah, I would go with wisdom.
Right?
I have a very lame superpower, but I would like the superpower to not have stomach aches after having a full course meal.
Honestly, I think a lot of people would kill to have that kind of ability. Like, there's no way you could not turn that down. But that's alright. I always start off with a funky question to see what people say. I think last stream we had was it Ash who decided that you would have the ability to not make me a weeb. But it did not work. Anyway, so getting to know you guys a little more, we know Frying Tiger is, US coordinator. He's basically a community manager, but he does all the US stuff. He gets sent to museums and such. Rapitor, you're a senior tech mod. Are you able to kind of elaborate on that more?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so don't get your hopes too high. It's not as fancy as Frying Tiger.
That's alright.
Well, tech mode is mostly about trying to convert whatever reports players send to us into something which the developers can actually use to fix the game, which is sometimes, well, difficult for everybody because we're kind of a middleman. And we have rules we have to follow when we don't have our saying for this. And sometimes players and people on the forum trying to send reports to us do not understand we cannot bend those rules for them, no matter who they are, what they do. So, well, we often get frustration sent to us because, yeah, you refuse my reports, or I don't understand why it's not being published yet, etc., etc. But in the end, well, it's not truly material we can send the devs to. It's like when you're going to your garage and say, yeah, my car is broken, fix it. If you're not more specific and you don't tell the guy what exactly it is, yeah, you're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
So our role is the difficult role to actually try to hold this interface as much as well as possible to actually connect players to devs without being actually guiding employees or anything. And well, sometimes we also have happy people saying thank you for helping us, and we're also grateful for those taking the time to make a proper report. Because what people don't always realize is when they are finding a report or finding an issue and trying to submit it to us, we will always verify, try to replicate, understand the core problem, which takes twice as much time. So when you're unhappy because your 1 hour bug hasn't been approved, we might have spent 2 hours trying to understand it, but not working. And yeah, that's kind of life of tech mod, and it's quite interesting. You have a few goodies sometimes, like you can actually see reports and bugs being fixed before the release, although we cannot actually talk about it. But it's always nice to see the game actually from the other side,
Yeah.
not only as a player, but from also the dev side, and see how complicated sometimes it is to fix a simple problem, or actually something which looks simple and is way more complicated from behind.
You're the guy that fixes or attempts to fix people's issues with some pieces, essentially.
Yeah, that's kind of right.
Yeah, it's the too long didn't read version. They're right though. And Tigerfrost, you're a content creator.
That is correct.
Yep, we've had. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know. My mind kind of blanked out. Sorry.
That's all right. We've had plenty of content creators on the Thundercast before. Like we've had Fly on here, we've had Michael's Boom on here, we've had Miles, we've had Data, we've had everybody under the sun basically. But you know, content creators, they're your YouTubers and streamers for War Thunder. They, well, not really much else to say.
I think the only content creator I actually met was NTAC, like way long time ago.
That must have
And
been a while
the
back.
first thing,
Oh,
the first thing he
nice.
said to me was to stop killing him. I had this thing. I don't know why, but like he was the first big content creator I think that we really had, and so every time I saw him in game, I just made it a habit of shooting him down, and it, it one of his YouTube videos, he mentioned it. And then I saw him like in real life, and that was the first thing he said to me. He's like, "God damn it, you got to quit killing me."
Yeah, I've been around the community. I've met a lot of the content creators. I think I've met them, just about all of them at this point. Maybe aside from some of the smaller ones that aren't super open, you know, they're more privatized. Like
Right.
But I've met Fly. I've met all the more, I guess, the bigger ones. And I'm kind of using this podcast as a way to learn about the staff more and learn about the content creators more, and then later on I'll bring in members of the when I get around to that.
Nice.
So the topic of discussion for today is the American tanks in War Thunder, and I do have a War Thunder squad going, so if you want an invite, just let me know. I think it'd be good
What
to...
are you doing?
Shermans, which is also the starter topic. The M4, M4A1, and the M4A3 105 Shermans. And I know Rapitor has a list. I will throw that up when I go through editing, and they can look at that one as
Freedom tanks.
that list will be there. Did anybody want an invite to the squad?
Sure.
Do you want an invite, Rapitor?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's a good start, but
What about you, Tigerfrost?
Sure. Is this for arcade or realistic?
To be realistic.
Alright.
I assume it's the same as Discord?
It is Tigerfrost _ capital T.
Okay. Yep.
yeah, I think I'm gonna pass.
That's alright, Rapitor.
As I told you, if I'm actually trying to play and say something roughly correct or smart, I'm gonna fail
It's
at
okay.
both.
So, being the US coordinator, Frying, and I know Rapitor did a wee bit of research, tell us a little bit about the Sherman tank.
Which one?
I guess we could start with the M4 and the M4A1 Sherman. Or actually, let's just start with the M4A1. It's one of the first Shermans you unlock in the American tech tree, if you don't go straight for the M4A3 105.
It's kind of a very, very broad question. It's like, tell us about the boat.
Tell us about boats.
Right. Yeah.
Let's
Jesus.
make it a bit easier. Let's go with... What knowledge do you have of A1 Sherman? Or even just the regular M4 Sherman, for that matter.
Well, the one we have in game is, closest to the early production, pretty much. And by that, it means it shares components with the interim M3, which means the suspension, the lower hull, the powertrain. It's got the cast and welded hull, the 30 cals mounted on it. late 43, the M4A holes were changed. They're a little bit thicker, about 2.5 on the glacis, inclined to 47, I believe it is. I don't know, about a few of those were built with the dry stowage, I know, if I remember correctly, and they were mounted with the 75 M3s. But the thing about the early M4s is, and it's the same thing with the Grizzly ones, the Canadian versions of them, or the British Sherman 2s. Is not enough of them were built in any consistent order. They kept switching parts out between the different manufacturing sites, changing different things out, basically until they got up to the M4A2 in main production model, when there was mass standardization across the production lines. Because you had so many people building them. You had Fisher, you had Pullman, you had American Locomotive, you had Baldwin, and you had Federal. And two of those were building the foreign service contracts, and then you had Canada that was building the license contracts through Ford. So basically, it wasn't until that huge war machine kicked in. Right around the M4A2 production line that you really saw enough standardization to put together a highly recognizable tank.
Yeah, I remember talking about the M4 Sherman to a couple of friends of mine, and they were talking about, I think it was the comparison between how many Shermans broke down compared to how many Tigers broke. I can't remember the exact ratio, but supposedly there were more Shermans that broke down than just not in what the Tiger did.
All right, what BR are we doing here?
3.
Also, when you say more Sherman in raw number, it means nothing when you have about 50,000 Sherman being produced. I don't think we have 50,000 Tigers being produced.
Yeah. I think, I don't even know how many Tigers Germany produced. That's beyond that one.
Let me check. Wikipedia knows. Yeah, please don't yell at me. You have a tech mod looking with Wikipedia when we say we don't
How
accept
dare
Wikipedia.
you?
It's okay, because all of the naval suggestions I did over the couple of few days, I have linked Wikipedia.
Da, da, da.
But it's only there so people can look at the history. It's not necessarily referenced.
Yeah, there is about 1,400 Tigers being built
Damn.
versus 50,000 Shermans, all versions together.
Quantity versus quality at its finest. So, on that note, what do you guys think of the Sherman tanks in War Thunder?
Overall, they're a good representation. You'll never have perfect artwork and stuff like that. It's just kind of the way it is. Especially when you have a game that's as aging as the game is. Models are updated, and they continue to update the models, and they get better. They get closer, especially with the latest line of how they produce the models. They're a lot better.
Yeah.
If you look at the ones that have come out in the last 2 years, they're just incredible. Especially like the models of the Abrams and the Tier 6 ones. The way they produce those models, and I know the process like firsthand, like all the way down to the triangles, so to speak. It's night and day from the old process of how they made 3D models for games 10 years ago.
Yeah. I think Shermans are quite appealing, looks-wise. Especially on more being go back and you can change the camera. Make them look clean or crisper.
Better grab a plane.
I'm just so sad you cannot actually turn the lights on
Yeah.
neither in planes nor tanks.
Headlights.
Because if you look at the Easy 8, you have all lights being drawn on the model, so
I
it had
think
to be quite cool to actually use them.
I think it'd be quite a cool addition, but maybe later down the line.
Please.
Well, I don't know in English since I'm not a native English speaker, but in my language we used to say if it's absolutely useless, it's basically absolutely necessary. So basically lights is no exception. It's useless in game, it will not allow you to blind anyone or anything, but then it's absolutely necessary.
It would be helpful during a night battle. It'd be helpful to find where the enemy is because you would see the flashlight and be like, "Ooh, enemy tank." But I can see a use for it. Maybe down the line though. Maybe when Gaijin decides that pitch black night battles are a thing and headlights are one of the few ways you can actually see. But I don't think that's down the line because if I'm not mistaken, Gaijin doesn't want any sort of gameplay hindering with at the moment.
Well, with heavy rain, I don't think the visibility would be so good, so obviously it would not favor tanks made for long-range engagement.
You don't really get matchmaker. That's alright. One of the things I'd like to see more of is just more variety in weather, really.
All right.
Well, that's because you're a tank player. When you're a flyer, you don't want to do that.
Oh, don't worry,
Well-
I'm a naval player too.
The thing about that is the weather's set to real time.
Yeah.
So, if the weather sped up, then, theoretically the speed of your ship would be insane.
That is true. What do you think of Sherman's Tigerfrost?
Of Germans?
I
Or
mean,
Shermans, excuse
Shermans.
me.
Right.
In terms of like IRL or in terms of gameplay in War Thunder?
Either or both. Totally up to you.
Well, I have one of those, call it anti-bias, but growing up here in the United States, I kind of got sick of the Sherman because it's everywhere on every street corner. You always hear about it on History Channel. But nowadays, I actually appreciate the Sherman a lot more, and in War Thunder, it's one of my favorite medium tank lines, up there with like the T-34 and the Panther. So I think it's an awesome tank, honestly.
I've driven one.
I'm jealous.
Over
Hey,
your car?
No, definitely not. But I also, when I went to Minnesota, I got to sit inside of one of only 4 surviving Sherman Jumbo 75 millimeters. Littlefield has the only running one, but up there in Minnesota at Camp Ripley, they have one of the only 4 surviving ones.
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably not going to get to ride in a Sherman anytime soon, being way over New Zealand. But
One of the other 4, or one of the other ones that's of the 4, I should say, is in the Samur Museum in France. I'm not sure where the other one is.
is there any Shermans that are relatively close to New Zealand? One that I could possibly
Or are you
ride?
counting sunken ones?
Probably if you go into the islands there.
I know we have a place working on a Walker Bulldog. In fact, I think they've done so much work to the Walker Bulldog that it's actually at the point where they've almost completely restored with an entirely new engine put in.
There's a website called AFV Registry, and they update it I don't know, about once or twice a year, that tells you where every single registered tank is, basically worldwide.
It's pretty handy. There's if you want to link it up in the chat, I want to look at that.
Sure, just a website.
I've just been dinked in the front of the turret. Which is quite surprising because I didn't expect that shell to do what it did. Just bounced off me. But how many Sherman variants altogether that you know of was there? Because I know, we've got the M4A3, the M4A2, the M4A1, and then there's also its spin-offs, so 76 with the wet racks and the 105 in Grade 3.
Oh
You don't
God.
want to go down that road.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Because
don't.
if you're only listing Shermans,
Early
with a cannon,
production, mid
it's easy.
production, late production, plus foreign production variants. Yeah, it gets up.
Well,
it goes
if you
up.
just look for weaponized Sherman, you have 19 of them being defaults. But then you add a Rhino bulldozer blade or a minefield remover, whatsoever you want, and you have 25 new versions. Ta-da!
Then you start factoring Marine Corps variants of tanks just in the U.S.
Too many Shermans, and then there's all the post-war ones that come after it. Like the M4A4 SA50 and at least I think that's
Oh yeah.
okay. And the M51 Super Sherman.
Yeah, I opened the
Well, you have the
Sherman
M50
page.
and the M55 Super Shermans, actually.
Yeah. But, you know, it's just such a well-known tank. I wouldn't say it's the most recognized tank, though. Or, I mean, okay. Let me rephrase it. It's the most recognized, but it's not... Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of the word, but... I was basically going to try and compare it to the production of the Centurion. But, you know, Centurion's post-war, so...
There's at least 3 of them coming through the rocks down there by the.
I'm in the zone of trying to sniper fight a Panzer IV. Not quite right. Anyway. So tell us a little about your adventures, or any adventures you can talk about, Frank Tiger, that Gaijin has sent you on. Whether it be the story of going to get M60 and Abrams armor values, whatever that may be. If it's shareable.
One second.
And that's why I'm not playing and talking.
I'm never gonna hit this Panzer IV. Oh, there's a plane.
Ow.
Right.
Oh, this might hurt.
There's a Panzerwerfer in the river.
I thought I got one of those earlier. There's another one already? What? Oh, yeah, Tedesco's talking about how Chile had some Super Shermans, they got rid of the 105s and added 60mm guns onto them. Oh. Oh god. See, the Sherman's proving its effectiveness right now. Actually, speaking of Shermans and being effective, let's talk about the Sherman Jumbo.
Oh dear God.
Have mercy.
I know how much of a pain that thing is in tank battles. Oh, I've just gotten shanked.
Well, the first one is effective at being it. Not so much for the rest.
Is it Panzer IV?
Did you happen to see the pictures of the Sherman Jumbo from Minnesota?
I don't think I do.
Oh God! If you look at the article, there's a picture of it from the side, but you can see in the front it has battle damage. Now, I don't want to hit that thing. It at least a 76, maybe larger, but there's 2 giant impacts in the top of that glacis. One of them actually cut off the top of the extra armor plate, and both ricocheted straight up. It actually missed the mantle completely, missed the turret, which means the tank was either hull down or whatever shot it was probably encamped, probably an anti-tank gun or something like that, firing up at angle. And but it did not. I was inside that tank, and I checked and I looked, and there was not a single bulge at all on the inside of that armor where that driver was sitting, which means he was absolutely protected. And it was a gouge that was at least as big as my head on the outside of that armor.
Holy shit. That's pretty impressive.
So, I mean, you know, say what you want about the way they build models, or you know, but that thing is legit.
I was wondering, where does this Jumbo nickname come from?
Probably Big
The
Sherman.
elephant.
It'd be, yeah, I can kind of see the resemblance, it being a very heavy tank and elephants being very heavy in general.
Good shot. I got the guy that was behind him there. They both had me pinned.
I'm just not sure Jumbo is actually a movie which is old enough for this.
You might be thinking of Dumbo, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and I proved myself silly.
That's alright.
No. I mean, they're both elephant names.
Yeah, this is Dumbo and this is Jumbo.
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna
there's
try to
Dumbo
get in the
and
cap here.
So this is, I don't know if you'll know, but is there any story to why the Americans stuck a 105mm howitzer on the M4A3? Or is
It was effective. Very effective.
I mean, I imagine it's effective, but I suppose they needed it for infantry clearance or something like that.
Not just infantry support. You know, it's a bunker buster.
Okay.
It works great against small vehicles. You know, enemy, you know, troop transports. You know, other, you know, light structures, buildings. Funny enough, the Marine Corps had a variant that not only had the 105mm howitzer, but it also had a flamethrower coming out the right side instead of a coaxial machine gun.
Okay.
you cannot have too much firepower.
Well, the Marine Corps didn't just use it in World War II. They kept that sucker all the way through Korea. So
Damn.
they actually upgraded the thing with an HVSS suspension, so it was practically a jumbo, just without all the extra armor.
Okay. So is that... I don't suppose that's a version of in game.
No, not that.
As I say, because I'm pretty sure this thing's the... Yeah, the M4A3105 HVSS Sherman.
Right.
But I don't think it's the post-war one that you're speaking of.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Pretty fancy history behind the jump. And then, from what I heard, or at least I imagine from Rapitor's researching he was doing, quote unquote, they couldn't replace the Sherman in a hurry during World War II. Because of the pain with production lines.
Well, there's that, and at the same point, there was no need. They didn't really need to. What they had with the Sherman was efficient and effective enough versus trying something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously you're right on that point, but I think
well, it's almost a mathematical formula. When your loss versus production rate gets, you know, above a certain ratio, you need to look, you know, at fixing the problem. If you can't fix the problem by production, then you make something else that's going to be more resilient. If your, you know, your loss versus production, you know, ratio is below a certain ratio, then you don't really need to fix that problem. You can look for, you know, more efficient ways, you know, in a more casual way, which is basically what the U.S. did. They, you know, really didn't do much in the way of heavy tank, you know, research. They had their projects, they pursued them, but they didn't put, you know, a giant priority on them like, you know, other countries did that had issues with production or with, you know, that whole, production and loss ratio. Germany couldn't produce very much, and they lost a lot. So they put a lot of stock into building things that they believed would be more resilient and kill more.
Oh my, how lewd.
Another one, another interesting fact is you need to remember that USA needs to bring everything from their continent to Europe to fight.
Yes.
So you don't want to have a 100 tons vehicle to carry over with a cargo, because it's a lot of metal and a lot of problems when you have to actually move it from A to B. Because logistically speaking, for Germany, it was a nightmare when they were going to the east fighting Russians. So imagine for Americans with all their parts, all their tanks, and they have to cross an ocean filled with U-boats, especially in early of the war, where U-boats were actually kings of the sea. So you don't want to actually have something too heavy or too complicated if you're not even sure you can actually enter your logistical access.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are talking about Mother Freedom here. We landed on North Africa with 9 complete Coca-Cola bottling plants, buddy. So
And that's true.
it is.
But yeah, another thing which is interesting with Shermans is when you look at the production rate, actually you can see the Russians evolving and actually the production lines being slowly upgraded, but nothing actually really new. And yeah, as Frank Tiger mentioned, you don't want to actually change your whole production line unless it's really critical. And you need also to remember one thing: war is expensive. To actually shut down a full production lines mean you're not providing more weapons to your troops, and you have to pay for every single change. I'm doing process engineering among mechanical engineering, so I can tell you when you have to stop production line, it's maximum for a few days if possible. Sometimes it's not even acceptable, but you need to upgrade it anyway.
Yeah.
So if you don't have, like literally have as a matter of life or death, to change it, you won't. Because it's just not viable from an economical perspective. Unless you're losing
That
the war, which is even less viable. But
That in the U.S., even though you have wartime production, you still have private companies that are operating by contract. So, if the government was to just suddenly pull those contracts, they'd probably get sued. And so there's a gradual phase out, basically. Like for example, when what was it? The M24, the Chaffee, when it got adopted. There was still something like I don't know, 1,000 or so M5 Stewarts, M5A1 Stewarts that had to be produced before they could fully adopt production of the Chaffee. So gradual phase out. They start producing parts while they are finishing production lines on that other tank. So for a while there, it was bits and pieces of both tank lines being produced at those factories, for the better part of a year and a half or so.
Yeah, the production lines is a big mess to me. All I know is tanks were produced by, start. Or sorry.
Well,
Oh,
in some countries during that time, you'll read stuff, that basically says, well, this many were ordered, production was halted and this was started, and that's because their companies were completely nationalized during the time.
Yeah.
In the U.S., that just didn't happen.
Okay.
and they were also ready from a logistical perspective. Because what people say is, yeah, why don't you just shut the line and open a new one, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that's great, but you still need material, goods, parts to be made, as Tiger said before. So if you're not ready and you don't have everything ready, and including molds for cast stuff or tools for machine stuff, you can't do that. Well, you can't shut your line, that's easy. You just literally pull the plug. When it comes to start a new one with everything being brought to your material, yeah, that's a little more complicated. So, because people always see a line as something which transform a good to something else, but you need to provide the good.
Yeah.
And that's something which happens upstream, and that's actually extremely complicated then.
Yeah. good history on the Sherman, I would say. So I know Tiger's been a bit quiet over there. He's been really well in the game, but
Just a wee bit.
tell us about your experience from being a content creator and playing Shermans.
In terms of like doing videos on Shermans, I actually haven't done that many, which is unfortunate because I really enjoy the Sherman. Like, this is I mean, in the game, obviously, I don't have much in the way of historical knowledge on the Sherman too much, but this battle rating we're playing here is probably my favorite of the Shermans. I enjoy the M4A2 with the 76, and I think that's about the furthest I've actually played on the Shermans in the game, so I don't have much experience with the M4A3 76 or the Jumbo with the 76. Yeah, that's about it for me. Unless you want to count the Calliope, which I've also never driven, so...
That obnoxiously loud tank that just goes pew, pew, pew.
Dude, I'll tell you right now, the Calliope is hands down. It doesn't matter what rank you're playing it at. It is the absolute best like team support weapon in the game. You for the main gun, just bring an entire load of smoke rounds, and you just rain fire with the rockets. It doesn't even matter if you kill anything, because you can scare an entire team from capping anything just by laying a smoke barrage that never ends, backed up with rockets flying at them that they can't even see where they're coming from. You can literally stop an entire team from capturing like at least 2 points from the start of the game before you ever need to go for the long reload. It's great.
Every time I hear the Calliope in a match, I just think, oh no.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, right. But see, like I've noticed this, and I've kind of worked on this a bit.
Yeah.
Its effect is even better. You know what I mean? And not a lot of people actually do this. When you just sit back there and pelt smoke rounds, not at the cap, but obviously at the advancing enemy team.
Yeah.
Don't smoke your own team and screen your advance and all that other stuff. No, you blind them, and then you launch your rockets way across the match. You do that, and they freeze in their place and take cover like they're gonna like camp and snipe, and it's hilarious.
I think that would be a good way to get people to not run out into the open and get shot, basically.
Well, the thing is they have no idea what's going on half the time.
Yeah. And just hear a 4-man squad of Calliope, just here.
Yeah.
I would use the Calliope, but I don't own the Calliope. And as far as Shermans go, I think I know, that the tank that replaced them after a while was the Pershing.
Yeah.
How that goes. And the Pershing
The world's heaviest medium tank.
What's this thing weigh?
Is a Pershing heavier than the Panther?
I would imagine so. 41.6 as opposed to... maybe it's not. Panther D's 45.3 in game, and the Pershing 41.6.
Haha, you can't fool me with numbers.
But then wasn't the Panther labeled a heavy tank at one point?
By US standards, yes, but US is not making the tank, so it doesn't count.
If you don't buy the US standard, then it is. But yeah. That's, as far as I know, it's the history of the Shermans as far as they go, and the M26 Pershing being post-war and all. Yeah. It's a bit of action. Especially that famous tank duel, before I forget, and I can't remember where it was. Was it Cologne? The Panther versus the Pershing?
Oh, shoot. I know what you're talking about, too, but I don't remember what it is either.
It's the famous tank duel where Panther was shooting at an M26 and M26 turn and just put a hole through it.
Poor Panther.
Probably.
Feels Panther, man. But yeah, so trying. You've worked on multiple tanks, I imagine. You've worked
Sure.
on M60s, Abrams. Well, I assume you've worked.
Yeah, I used to own a company, and basically that's what we did. We fulfilled DoD contracts. As Tigerfrost kind of pointed out, here in the U.S., there's Shermans everywhere, but there's more than that. There's there's tanks in private, public display everywhere, but not just tanks. There's boats, there's warships, there's cannons, field artillery pieces, um, it, planes, you name it. And every single one of those, believe it or not, is still existing in the DoD registry. The Department of Defense and the U.S. government still own them, even though they donate them to VFWs for display or wherever they happen to be. And there's rules and regulations, believe it or not. It's the government after all.
Yeah.
As far as how they have to be displayed and maintained, it's not just how they have to be dispositioned, as far as some people do ridiculous shit like fill the barrels in with concrete, which isn't necessary, but they do it. All you have to do is just make it unoperable. But some people go a little too far. But other than that, we have to go around and just every now and then verify that stuff has been done, and that it's not fallen into a tremendous amount of disrepair, that it's not falling into ruin, so to speak. If it's in need of some repair, we do the repairs, and basically we give it a nice shiny little paint job,
Okay.
make it look good, bust the rust, and all that necessary stuff.
Okay. And you've worked on. Okay, here's a question for you. How many different, not necessarily variants, but let's say types of American tanks have you worked on? When I say types, I mean like M551s, Ontos, M48, M60, etc.
Jesus, I couldn't even tell you.
Too many to name.
Yeah. Well, because I started doing that when I was a lot younger.
Okay.
My I grew up part computer geek and part military nerd, and right. So I started working on video games basically in the mid '90s, and the first game I worked on was Air Warrior 2, and then I joined the military, and my weekend side company project was busting rust on tanks, and in power washing them, and all that other stuff. So I grew that business, by myself. And then I met a guy named Pete Tours, ironically, was a stunt man in Hollywood, and I was on vacation. And so I met this guy, and that's how I got involved in like media and doing training and stuff like that, doing historical consultations.
Okay.
So that's how eventually I got here. I started doing consultations for video games and films, making sure the tanks were right there, while still basically busting rust, and yeah, historical documents, secret documents, basically is what led me here.
Oh, that's
So
I think like it's a very admirable. Once you get to the point where you're being paid to play video games and make sure your games are getting bits and pieces right, I think that's the highlight of. Or I just think that's fancy.
it's fun, especially when you get to actually play. Um, yeah, I find myself a lot of times doing a lot more stuff than I do actually get to play. It's the blessing and the curse.
Yeah. Maybe one day I'll be paid to play video games.
I'm making a small parenthesis here, but I think it's funny to where Frank Tiger saying, "Yeah, I've been exposed to secret documents. Now I'm working with Russians." You know?
It's the way it goes.
I'm talking about the hashtag secret documents.
Yeah, sure.
The
Wink,
actual
wink.
secret documents.
Bossy good.
Which, is actually really funny because, literally we just kind of dump stuff out all the time. It's just a matter of, catching the right people at the right time, to request something. Rapitor will tell you that.
I deny everything.
Actually, speaking of actually, no. Let me deviate away from that. I was gonna say we had another senior tick mod on, but I don't think it was actually a senior tick mod we had on. It was a senior suggestion mod. Or I'm going to have him on, and that's Coke Spray. He's coming in for the next one.
Oh yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, we had. Oh, who was it? I remember having a tick mod on. I'm just trying to think of who it was. I think it was Gruber.
Rick, yes.
Right.
So Gruber would actually be a senior as well.
Okay, well, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So how many
Having
people
VIPs.
How many? Or I suppose you can correct me if I'm allowed to ask this or not. Roughly, how many people actually do tick mod things for the stuff?
Let me check. We have 3,
Because I know there's over 10 game masters now.
8. We're about 10, still counting 11, 12.
Okay.
We're 13 right now. So 10 tech mods and 3 seniors.
Pretty fancy. Did Asco just sit here and chat? I'm heading to the AAF Tank Museum tomorrow.
Nice.
That's cool.
I imagine he'll see some stuff there. Too bad we don't really have any, or I don't have any tank museums really close to me. The closest tank museum to me, I think, is... Just check real quick. Yeah, Waidoru National Army Museum. But it's like an hour and a half south of Taupo, which is half a country away. So I won't be seeing any tanks anytime. So yeah. So what about the XM803 or the MBT70? Do you know much on that?
What do you want to know?
The XM803 and the MBT70 tanks. The weird American-German joint project tank.
Yeah. The MBT-70.
You sound very disappointed with it.
Yeah. I'm not its biggest fan. It wasn't its own biggest fan. It was. It's one of those things like many American projects that it was important because it led to the development and allowed us to test many functional things that were very useful on other on other things.
Yeah.
But by itself was so incredibly expensive that it basically went nowhere and was only allowed to really continue because we had spent so much money on it that if they didn't keep continuing the project for a while, they couldn't justify the fact that they had spent the money to begin with. Exactly, which is ironically the same reason why the Sergeant York went on for so long. They had spent so much money on it that the Army could not let that fail. So
Yeah, I heard the story of the Sergeant York that decided that it would lock onto the audience instead of a target they had set up.
Yeah, it was one of its many wonderful things that had happened. That and the fact that that was only, and that only happened during one of the rare times they could actually get the gun to work. Oftentimes, only one barrel would fire, and or it would fire, then just jam.
Yeah.
It had all kinds of problems. Keep in mind, that the guns that they used for those weren't, it's not like they were, new special, you know, awesome precision made weaponry here. They basically had a whole bunch of 40 millimeter Bofors, like the twin Bofors setups, jammed in a warehouse that they had stored there since World War II, stacked on top of each other in racks, and basically left there. They weren't well maintained. Most of the barrels were bent, and they had to throw out something like 60% of everything that was in the warehouse because it was just so poorly warped from time and being improperly stacked, like literally thrown in heaps. And they pulled out what they thought was useful and installed them in there, and figured if they got the thing passed, that they could get new ones built. And so that was the reason for most of the mechanical failures of the gun. But when they would fire, the guidance system was all jacked up. But ironically, the guidance system from that weapon allowed us, when they finally did get it working on subsequent models of other things, including like the Abrams tank, and other subsequent technology for other vehicles. So kudos to that. But oh my God, what an embarrassment that was.
Some things just don't go as planned, really.
Well, it reminds me. It reminds me of the hover tank. Remember Stripes,
Oh god.
the movie Stripes with the hover tank?
Yep, I remember it.
Everybody's got to jump off the grandstand when it runs it over.
Yeah.
Must be too young for this reference.
I mean, you can't be
It's a
too
Bill
young.
Murray movie.
You can't be too young. I'm 20 and I know about it, so.
That's like not knowing about Kelly's Heroes.
Oh well. Could be a lot worse. I'm just going over the protection analysis for some of the Shermans. But, so, Tiger, here's a question for you. As a content creator, what got you into... Actually, you can all answer this if you want, but what got you into War Thunder? What was kind of like, oh, this is pretty cool, I want to try this game out, kind of... What was the way that led you into the
Actually,
game?
I had a friend of mine that was putting in some work as a GM over here. He passed away a few years ago for cancer. But he was a really good friend of mine. He was a member of the original GM team over here before all that, back in 2012, or I think he joined actually the team in late 2011, like really, like literally the original formation of the entire thing.
Yeah.
And excuse me.
It's alright.
Swallowed my coffee the wrong way. But so he basically just told Keith and Trojan at the time, Nick, that hey, I know this guy, and they asked him to invite me over, and that was it.
Okay. And then I imagine you were one of the early, or not early, what am I thinking?
Well, originally I joined the alpha test team.
Yeah.
Along with a bunch of other guys. They actually saw some guys from some old companies that I worked with at the time, and then let's see, Trojan left. Then me and Keith basically ran the alpha team back then. From there on forward, until didn't really need the alpha team anymore. And for a while there, I worked on the research side of things, some stuff with the community, and then, basically been doing what I've been doing now for, a few years now.
Pretty cool. So you're one of the earlier staff members as opposed to...
Oh yeah, I've been
Lighting
here
up.
forever.
Forever and forever.
We can start this thing like full house now.
Yeah, we're definitely getting built up there, but... What about you, Tigerfrost? What got you into War Thunder?
Pretty straightforward. I had always loved World War II, movies, games, stuff like that. But when it came to online World War II games, I never really found one. Like, I don't know, there was this really old one called World War II Online. I think it's still going, actually.
It is. I think it's on Steam, actually.
I played that a little bit, but it never really worked out for me. I wanted something like what, is it wrong for me to mention a different game from a different
That's alright.
World of Tanks? I remember one of my old friends had actually introduced me to that game, and I thought it looked really, really cool. And then in 2013, somebody, actually I think it was that same year that I found out about World of Tanks, just a couple months beforehand. 2013, one of my friends was like, "Have you ever heard of this game called War Thunder?" Like, no, never heard of it. It must be crap, because I've never heard of it. And then they talked me into looking into it, and then when I saw it, it blew my mind. Now, of course, it was only planes at the time, but that was enough for me. You look at the tech trees back then compared to now, and how now they're just massive, and back then they were massive too. I had never seen a game with so much content and so much what's that word I'm looking for? I don't remember what the word I was looking. Diversity is one thing. Where there's
Swag?
Starts with P, I think. Yeah, it had swag too.
Replayability, playability.
Potential. There you go.
There you go.
With the planned, having the fleet and the army and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when I installed it on my really crappy old laptop and had to play it on like low settings, I just got hooked and could not stop playing it, and it's been that way ever since. And I'm happy.
I can understand that because it's exactly how I started War Thunder. A friend introduced me to it, and I was like, "Oh, what's this game? It looks like crap." Of course, I ended up playing it, and now look at me. I've got over 4,000 hours in the game. I've been playing for, 3 years now? And it just blows my mind.
War Thunder is a drug.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story. I met this guy at PAX in Boston, and we were there actually showing Cross out. But I had a laptop there, and I don't know why, but I was showing somebody else War Thunder, and I was only showing it to him because he had asked me about it, and I, was on a break. I wasn't doing anything, so I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll show it to you." And this other player walks up, and he's looking over my shoulder, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's War Thunder," and he's like, "Did you guys update it or something?" And I was like, "No, it's just just it." He had looked at the game because a friend had showed it to him, and decided it was crap, and obviously didn't play it. But he didn't. He thought that the game was crap because he thought the graphics were terrible.
Well,
And yeah, didn't even put he didn't put it together that his buddy's computer was just a potato.
Oh, I see.
Probably running on like ULQ or something. And yeah, and then he saw it on my laptop, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's beautiful."
So pretty.
Yeah.
It is a very pretty game, War Thunder. I'll give it that.
It's definitely one of the best, if not the best looking free-to-play game I've ever seen, personally.
I mean, I would definitely say it's one of them. I don't know what I can use as comparison, because the only other free-to-play games I really play are, I used to touch on Onigiri, which isn't the prettiest by far, because it's just a Japanese MMO game. And then Osu, I guess, would be the other free-to-play game, but it's not really graphic intensive, it's just a bit different, isn't it? But yeah, I think it's the best looking one I've played, definitely. So, sometimes here and there, it gets a bit weird and I have lighting issues. It's alright, it's just my hanger that does that.
I'll tell you right now, it's pretty insane like with Oculus Rift, like crazy.
I remember watching a couple of, or it might have just been Fly actually. He covered the HTC Vive or Oculus or something and War Thunder, and it just looked awesome, but it also feel like it would make me a bit sick.
Until you actually sit in the thing with VR on, it's not the same as like watching someone review it.
Yeah.
It's a completely different experience. We in New York, we put actual Air Force pilots inside the Rift and strapped them into a MiG-15 bis, and they had a blast, like absolute blast.
That's
That's a very nice story.
I kind of wish there was more of that, like more stories like that, where people were getting old pilots and maybe even veterans are getting strapped into virtual reality with War Thunder and then just given the controls and they're like, go ham.
I don't remember his name, but there is a guy. He has a YouTube channel. I haven't seen a video from him in years, but he was going around to like old folks' homes, basically doing just that. Finding these old pilots and putting them in VR, playing War Thunder.
That's cool. I have the temptation to go find videos on that now.
Uh,
Yeah. So we're gonna go a wee bit off topic from American tanks, kind of delve into just tanks in general. How do you think, in your opinion, like, do you like the way tanks have developed? Have they, is your favorite tank in game, or what is your favorite tank? We'll go from there.
for playability or just cool factor.
We'll do both. Give us your playability favorite and your favorite looking.
For sheer playability, good God, I like my Doom Turtle.
Doom Turtle.
Yeah, I can absolutely just assault people with that thing. Yeah. That whole lineup right there of the T-28 backed up with Walker Bulldog, I can do terrible things to an enemy lineup. I'm pretty dangerous with that Bulldog, and just as dangerous with that Doom Turtle. It just depends on the enemy basically. If they're cap heavy, then I'm taking the caps back. If our team is kind of on the ball, then I can be really aggressive with that Bulldog. I'm very content just sitting back and playing scout, repairing, smoking, and I'm totally cool with that. So like I said with the Calliope earlier, I'm a really good annoying support person. I don't necessarily have to kill somebody. I play for the win. There's much more points in that. So
yeah, your the way of using that Calliope is going to be quite terrifying if I ever find you in a RB match.
well, plus I have that giant magnet over top of my head that says national coordinator, which it works both ways, and you just have to switch strategy because if the enemy team sees it and realizes that you're on staff, they either do one of two things. They all want to kill you, or they just kind of treat you normal. If they treat you normal, then that's it. I'm going for them. If they all come at you, then you just take a defensive stance and let your team win. So works.
Yeah, it's one of the few reasons I'm glad I still haven't been given my Game Master title. I'm not sure why though. It's been about 7 months, and I've talked to Scarper about it, and I've talked to Meg about it, but I don't know.
Yeah, you will see. It's very fun. Same goes with technical moderator. People just rush you.
What about your tanks, Rapitor? What are your cool factor and favorite tanks?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be very lame here, but I'm a plain player.
Oh, that's fine.
I literally cannot find fun playing tanks. I did during the release for the beta in the first place. I did grind my US tree quite well a few years ago, but I haven't been playing tanks for like 2 years, 3 years now.
Oh wow,
I fly, that's all.
that's
I'm
alright.
well, I told you when you invited me here, I'm definitely more playing guy, so yeah,
I mean,
I did my homework and I looked around for what I know about German production lines, but for the rest, nope.
you might as well tell us your favorite plane then.
Yeah.
On that,
Well, I'm quite versatile with plane. It depends. I have my moods.
you ever
You
move?
know, sometimes I'm actually in the mood of shooting down people with a fighter or getting some challenge with a heavy fighter, which obviously makes you an easier target for people looking at your tech modes tag. And well, sometimes I just like feeling like bombing. It's quite relaxing, but it's not always stimulating.
Yeah, that's
That's
alright.
yeah. In terms of planes, I play them all, so I have my personal preference for the P-51H because I think this plane is beautiful.
Looks pretty.
And well, I just really like the way it's designed. It's very smooth.
It does
Only
look.
curves, no angles. But well, Russians also have a few nice fighters. Germans have good ones. So yeah,
Speaking of
my
German
heart is not
aircraft, I very much like that TAR 152 H1. The very
the
long,
slender
high altitude.
plane. Yeah, it does have a nice look. Yeah, well, if you look at Focke-Wulf design, it's actually more curvy than 109s, which are much more like squared and edgy.
Yeah. I just like
But yeah, that's not American tanks.
Alright.
We'll be back for next one when you're doing something with planes.
That's alright.
Player. Let's not jeopardize this one.
Alright. What about you, Tigerfrost?
You are asking one of the hardest questions that I have to answer
Yeah.
for favorite tanks.
Oh, you know, this
So
cool,
I'm-
this cool factor of playability, so you get two choices here.
I'm gonna cheat and do 3 choice.
That's fine.
Okay. If I had to choose my favorite tank, it has to be between one or the other. There's a lot of vehicles I love, so I'm sorry to all you other vehicles out there that are listening in right now. But I love the American T-32, and that goes with the T-32E1 as well for playability. And also for playability, I adore the Japanese Chinu 2. And as for cool factor, literally everything on the German tech tree.
Just everything. I mean, they do have some cool tanks.
All the square things, they thumbs up.
I mean,
Did they have any curvy tanks?
Panther?
Like,
I guess. It's about as curvy as you're gonna get. Maybe the
yeah,
Stugs?
until you get to their... Yeah, a little bit.
They have a curvy.
Okay, everything that's not curvy when it comes to tanks for me personally. The more square, I don't know why, I like boxes, I guess.
I mean, you must like the mouse then, because that's... quite
The
boxy.
mouse, it looks great. The Tiger, it's iconic. I love how it looks. The Panther's great. The Tiger 2 is great. Ferdinand is ugly, but great.
Oh, Ferdinand.
It's a freaking mobile safe. That's all it is. It's a
Basically.
big bank vault.
Yeah, Tiger's the definition of a casemate tank.
Oh yeah.
Well, Schrödinger is actually German, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that's I think I know where he took his idea of a cat in a box from.
Oh.
That makes sense. I think, in terms of my favorite tank, I'm a bit biased towards Japan. The STAs, Type 61, Type
Hence my
60.
Chinu 2 choice.
The Cheeto 2 is great. I love my Cheeto 2. The Cheeto Late, Chino, all those tanks. And I guess if I had a second choice, as much as I hate the heat shell on it, would be the AMX-30. I adore that thing and I hate it at the same time.
I've never played it personally yet. I don't own it.
It's a heat slinging Destroyer of Worlds.
Which tank?
The AMX-30 1972.
Ah.
Oh, something about it just. I guess it's the way the
It's a
tank
nice
looks.
looking tank.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, the AMX-30 still has classified information on it for whatever reason.
Still in service.
Yeah, that'll be why.
So it depends on the classified information. When they say classified information, it's kind of like the Abrams.
Abrams.
It's highly dependent on what you're talking about. Because like for example, the structural information, the hull itself, you can find that, but you can't find the component information for the hull.
Yeah.
They'll tell you the layout. They'll tell you the thickness of the hull plates, but they won't tell you the measurement of how big those hull plates are, which is obviously why part of the reason why I went to Minnesota was I had to go and physically measure every single one of those plates on that hull, that turret, the entire structure, photograph it all, measure weld lines, everything, in order to verify everything that had been done, and correct anything that needed to be corrected. So, but all that comes with obviously the depth sound measurements and everything else that go along with that.
Yeah.
So when they say classified, it's sometimes the original documents that they release are still written from a time when they were producing documents. They just didn't put that information on, like for example those hull plants. So at some point in the future when the tank isn't maybe in service at all, because here's the thing, the M1 isn't in service anymore for the most part.
Yeah.
There are still some M1s though that are sold in places, but as far as the M1 Abrams itself goes, technically it's not in service and it's not being produced. However, M1 production block 3 is still on what they call project hold status. And it has been for the better part of 15 years. They had planned a production block 3, and they just couldn't pay for it. Instead, actually longer than that, 20 something years now. Instead, the Gulf War happened. They kept producing and upgrading the M1A1 and the M1A2, and now they're moving into the M1A3. But they never canceled. They just stopped. They just didn't fund and stopped the research on. But they never actually canceled the program for production block 3 M1 Abrams. The designs and everything else are still out there. And even though they retooled the factories to make M1A2s, the factories still exist. So it's one of those things where at any moment they could just decide, hey, let's do this. And probably, they might. Maybe they could sell that production capability to another country or whatever it is. So that's the reason why that they don't release that information, even though now theoretically, you're talking about let's see, production block 2, which are the actual General Dynamics tanks, which started in '83. That's 30 something years. So even though it's been that long, they still won't release that stuff.
Yeah. That's understandable. Yeah. I was trying to think of something to say, but it just didn't come to me.
No. It's okay. It's okay. It's technical bullocks.
Yeah. Blows my mind sometimes. But
But that's why you have to do the kind of research the old-fashioned way, a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because short of doing that, you have to probably would have to call General Dynamics themselves, you would have to negotiate some sort of, long-winded contracted licensing deal and pay a gigantic amount of money in order to probably license an Abrams that they can't tell you fully about. And good God, I wouldn't even want to know what that bill would be.
I don't want to know about it.
Well, I mean, Gaijin has directly licensed vehicles before, and there are some in the game. Like, for example, some of the Lockheed planes, and some of the other ones.
P-38 for sure.
Yeah, P-38 is licensed directly from Lockheed Martin. It's literally, its structural integrity is perfect to Lockheed Martin specifications.
The European Canadian just popped into the chat and asked, what do you think of them bringing back hidden vehicles such as the Spevieros, Years, and SBs, or SBs
Yes.
lost in the last update? I've noticed
Anytime I've seen them take vehicles out of the tree, sooner or later they have some sort of odd rotation, some way that brings them back into the game, whether it's an event, some sort of special opportunity for bundle purchase, the Warbond shop.
Or an
Sometimes
update.
if they're an update, or there's even been small events for like national holidays where they've been like here, have this. There, what was it? Not this past 4th of July, but the 4th of July before that. You logged into the game and did like 3 missions and win 3 missions, and you got the skyrocket for the U.S. So they do stuff like that all the time, and it's actually I want to say almost a good thing, because if everything that was ever made was always available, they wouldn't have anything kind of special and unique to give away at times. I don't even have everything.
Yeah, there's
Give me my PO2.
I'm more interested in the
Like far from
I'm interested in the HE-51B with the pontoons on it.
Yeah, I actually do have that one.
I want that one.
I want the T2.
Yeah, the hydroplane of doom.
Gib,
I will say this, I've only successfully once been able to land in naval battles with one of those little tiny float planes and cap something without getting wrecked.
and
it's always been the sea cap, like way on the other side of the map.
Yeah, where nobody goes.
Right.
I always I find that using the BB-238 and doing it's quite fun. Mainly because you're just a big floating massive plane and you've got a whole bunch of guns slapped on you.
Right.
But yeah, that's always a... But I think I'm going to wrap the podcast up there. I'm going for about an hour and a half, and I try to keep it within an hour and a half, 2 hours-ish.
Here you go. Old people flying planes in VR.
Awesome. But thanks for traveling, guys. If you want me to link YouTube or your forum profile or any kind of thing you want me to link, just PM it to me once it's over. I'll get round to uploading it to YouTube at some point when I've got like 8 hours free, because the last podcast I did was 3 hours and that took like 12 hours to just get up on YouTube.
Canadian, you talking about the ones in the German trade?
He's talking about just like all of the vehicles they took out of the game years ago and have only just recently re-added them.
Like the year 2 TATs that were removed, I think, were included in that.
And the SB2M 103 something. SB2M.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be
Oh,
fair,
yeah, there is.
I have them all because I used to be in the game since 2012, so it was a time when you got them unlocked by level up to 20 levels,
Oh.
How
about... Oh, no.
They're just literally all the same with... Yeah.
There's open the year folder that
Hold
you're
on.
looking at right there.
That was my fault there. He means the ones that haven't been added back in.
Yeah, he's talking about like the year 2 MTAT and things like that. Some of them were removed because they were redundant models that basically, like for example, with the year There was one that was literally just a small change of turrets.
Well, that's basically the problem. Half of the Russian planes you have there, which used to be in abundancy initially, are all the same, plus minus an engine. For instance, SB2M100 is different from SB2M103 because the engine goes from 100 to 103, which is another model. 105 is the same thing. 103U is the same thing with a different supercharger, so the critical altitude is different. For the rest, it's almost always the same except for the turret. For the year 2 is the same thing. Basically, LU is for lower turrets, TT is for lower turrets plus dorsal turrets. And that's all you have different. The rest is the same engine, same performances, same bomb loads. So in the end, you have 4 times the same plane-ish, plus minus a few minor differences, which, unless you're an aviation enthusiast like me, you won't even know about it. So, that just makes your grind longer and longer without any purpose, which is why it's been removed.
Yeah, TC says this argument could be used for many planes in the game to be removed.
Well, if you don't shorten out your SB and year 2 lanes, the Russian bombing lane is actually the longest one in the game.
Didn't know that.
Well, it's kind of like, recently they just did the thing, the shuffle in naval to make German and the Russian lines the same average progress with the other naval lines to get to destroyers.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And kind of like how they try to balance the economy between fleet, aviation, and army. Regardless of the amount of models in the tree, they want you to kind of time-wise progress, from rank 1 to rank 5 or rank 1 to rank 6, or in the case of fleet, rank 1 to rank 4 in about the same amount of time. In order to, kind of have some sort of balance, whatever that means, so to speak, progression-wise. They don't want somebody to complete any tree in any nation in a day. So that's why that each individual unit has its own research value, but it also has its own kind of economic value too. Different boosters, and stuff like that are native specific to that thing. And so I think in the early days they put out a lot of models, but then again, a lot of models were original imports, I think, from Birds of Steel too. And so they thinned a couple of them out at one point just because some trees were very, very bare compared to others. So I think in the case of some of those, they were just overkill probably. I don't know. I can't speculate directly for them, but they just probably weren't seen as necessary since they were such minor changes.
Yeah, I think you could pass off. He's just talking about why 2 B-25s. I think the reason the B-25s aren't folded currently is because back in the day they filled that kind of medium bomber gap for America. Because you would go straight from, I don't know, was the PBY back in the day? Or yeah, straight from the PBY up to a B-25 and then to a B-17. Whereas nowadays, it's kind of some stuff there. You could probably folder the B-25s or even folder the first 2 B-17s.
Well, and the thing is you can't look at tech you can never look at these tech trees as being complete.
Yeah.
If you look at them, there's just nothing but gaps. If you were to stack all the tech trees on top of each other, you would probably see one tech tree that would be completely full all the way down. So
Germany's kind of like that.
Development continues.
Germany's pretty much full all the way down until tier 4. There's a few gaps that lead into the jets.
And some countries only have 4 lanes right now.
Yeah.
So.
Looking at that Italian tree where it's chilling there with 4. Or only just recently 4. It used to be 3, actually.
Exactly.
Actually, you're right. It's surprising to see the US tree only got 4 lanes and not 5.
I mean, it's Army, Navy, dive bombers / attackers and then bombers.
Yeah, attacker craft.
Yeah. I think that's how that tree goes, and then the German tree split between BF and Focke-Wulf, but your attackers, or your heavy fighters, and then your attackers slash heavy fighters, and then bombers. The Russian one's
Right.
similar to the German one, where it's Yaks versus LA versus I can't remember. This one is MiGs basically.
Polycarpov and Mig.
Yeah.
Right, but over time they've added, 5,
Yeah.
10, to a tree at a time. Sometimes, they've, been tackling, the tank aircraft, instead while producing, naval, So it's going to take time to fill in those trees, but they're in content creation mode. While they're still developing, actively everything that goes into the background. So, I mean, they're, obviously, separate teams that work on those things, but it's still a small company, So you got to look at a company that's, at maximum about 150 people,
Yeah.
something like that. It's not that many employees.
Yeah. European Canadian now. So since times have changed, can we have them added back in?
Please.
It's not really what I do.
It's not really his area to say, really. The kind of thing you would ask on maybe a shooting range video or something. Whether or not they can add in pre-2014 planes. But yeah, I mean, I know. I know.
I'd be more than happy to, forward your concern.
I mean, if you want to forward it, Oh, he's asking in your opinion, should they? Like, in your opinion, should they bring them back? I think personally, I would like to see them back.
I'm
but then
always a fan for more content. You know, hands down, I'm always a fan for more content. At the same point, um, I probably read more feedback than anyone you know. That I am on Facebook every single day. I'm in the forums every single day. And although I never post, I don't even have an account. But I do read Reddit every single day. Um, it's I can tell you now, for every single action, there's definitely an equal and opposite reaction. So if we were to put that in there, then we would, and this is the reason why the suggestion area of the forums is there, because it allows us to take at least a core sampling. And I know not everybody reads the forums. I know not everybody reads, whatever section of the community that things are getting posted or distributed in. 100% acknowledged. However, that does gives us, at least a sampling in some way, to allow the community to at least, up a post to show support for a particular idea, even something as inane as this, because you don't have to look at the bombers in that area. You have to look at what's at the end of the rainbow there at tier 5, because you're going to have somebody that is 1 or 2 airplanes away from unlocking that thing, that is a non-premium user or whatever it is, that suddenly has to go and grind those things out before they can then go proceed to grind out that big, beautiful prize at the end of the rainbow that they've been staring at for months.
You have more frustrating actually. When you researched it, you couldn't afford it yet. You're waiting for sales,
Right.
and before the sales, a new plane is coming in. Then you have to purchase the previous one or research it at least to be able to buy yours.
TC's talking about how
And we have
put them
people
in
actually extremely frustrated about that.
European Canadians talking about putting them in existing
The original folder that they in doesn't exist. They used to all be in one giant folder together. Now they're in 2 split ones. So I don't know exactly how they would do that. To be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, that's
they would have to probably be put into 2 separate folders again. And I don't know what the BRs of that would be. To be perfectly honest with you, I'd have to go look at my thing in game and see what they are now.
Yeah, I'm looking at the PU2s. between
Yeah.
370.
And again, that's not even what I did. It's not even what I do. So I can't even speculate how that would affect everything.
Oh, I think I've hit my limit for stream time now.
But I do think it's a very valid point and suggestion because I am always for content.
Yeah, like Sabras just pointed out that the planes aren't completely gone per se, like the OS2Us. If you got them before they removed, they will remain. But I
Right.
doubt it's not as easy as just unhiding certain aircraft.
Yeah.
It'll be a bit more complex than just unhiding something. Because there's new aircraft in the place of where they would have been in the tree. So they have to find a new spot for them and slot them in. I don't know. But, that
Another thing I found, if the community wants to possibly get something bad enough, they'll get it. I mean, look at the PO2. PO2 was removed for the same reason. It was useless, absolutely useless, but it became a cult favorite, and they give that thing out at least once a year.
Yeah. So, maybe some community support for stuff that's hidden. It'll pop back up one day and you can get like a day to research it. Kind of like what they did with the LA-174.
Right.
Everybody was given about a day or two to research that thing, and if you didn't get it, it would be gone again. But it was still available to be researched. So maybe another day like that for that or something. I don't know. Something like that. I think that'd be a good way to bring back the old hidden vehicles. But that's a suggestion for the forum, and,
Right.
Tigerfrost talking about the lag 3-4, isn't that the one we have to be friends with the divs or something?
No.
No.
It was. There's oh god, you're talking about the one that was given out for purchasing.
The very, very early lag 3-4, the one that Elite keeps handing over my head in the War Thunder. Or
Yeah.
he keeps making me jealous
No.
because I want that thing.
Yeah, no, there was that one was one of those deals, kind of like the original deal for the D521.
Okay.
It was part of some sort of like hardware or magazine, like subscription purchase or something like that, and just it's a hidden plane.
Yeah. Put in a word for me because I really want it.
Could you please?
Yeah.
Now I want it, man.
I really want that plane. It completes my lag collection. I've got every other lag bar that one. 3.8 right through to 366.
This is what you do. Next time they're giving something out, and you already have it, then
Yeah, convince them.
You toss your elevator pitch right there.
Oh god, Rapitor's showing it off. Why must you do this?
At least he didn't include the TU2 in there, just the rank 1 planes. Otherwise, then I'd be furiously jealous.
I bet you Rapitor's
Well,
got it.
those were the TU2 is different. The TU2 was the aircraft version of the German Sherman. It was sold as a pre-order in order to come in and test the aircraft during the pre-access period.
I think you're talking about the straight T2 without the S in the Russian territory, like the basic.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I have a question on the TU2 actually.
Mhm.
Like,
Sure.
Was there you evil person? Was there was there a bug with the TU2 that gave it to people who purchased packs that, like, in mid 2013? Because there were people that I brought into the game that purchased their first bundle pack, signed up in like September 2013, and they got a TU2 on accident, but Gaijin let them keep it.
I never heard anything about that. No.
The TU2 was part of a mega bundle because typically I got mine because I built the Pacific campaign pack.
Right.
And I also got like the Dora and the TU2 and basically one premium plane per nation. And the TU2 was the premium equivalent for Russians.
Yeah, that was the ultimate pack. It was $99 if I remember correctly, and you got the XP38. You got a 109, for the
190
Germans.
D13.
Yeah, that's right.
D13, 190 D13, your TU2, you got the Typhoon Mark 2B,
Yes,
A6
the
M5.
A6 M3. Yeah.
So M3, right? And that
Wait.
was all,
Whoa,
because
whoa,
we
whoa,
only got
whoa.
5 nations back then.
Hold the phone. There's an A6M3 you can get in a pack.
A6 M5 Co.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. Yeah.
Co Ryzen, yeah.
I was gonna say,
I was right.
there's a 0 I
That
don't
scare
was
me.
wrong.
Basically, all the original 5 starting planes, you got them in one pack, plus you got the Pacific and American campaign,
Okay.
and you got access to the original aircraft testing.
Okay. That makes sense. It freaked me out for a minute there. I was like, whoa, there's a 0 I don't have yet. I was gonna have to go big to make about getting it somehow.
Can still sell a kidney.
I'll give them both my kidneys.
I'll give both my kidneys, yeah.
I don't need them.
There's a hidden KI-10.
Okay, that's the K10 too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2C.
Yeah, right. BRB, let me just go PM Orson. I need this.
I think I have that, actually.
I
It's a little camouflaged helicopter.
yeah, it was an artist award for War Thunder Live, if I'm not mistaken. They were giving it out.
It was, yeah, I think in recent times, yeah, originally it was just another reserve plane.
Yeah. But,
Yeah, I don't know if you remember or you actually know this link. It's from War Thunder Forum. I will share it with you. You also have the one for planes and tanks, for ships and tanks, obviously. But this one was done actually from a user. He put a lot of work into it, and I helped him to actually troubleshoot the list. I mean, some planes were actually existing in the files, but you cannot fly them. Typically,
yeah.
you could actually find a P26A35, something like this, which was existing in the file, but you cannot have it because it's not flyable. It's not existing.
Yeah.
So I basically helped to actually get rid of those dummies, which were named but not existing. And also,
Really?
this is
you're talking about the hidden
entirely
plane
accurate.
list?
Isn't that P26 still visible? Well, I would say still if it was never flying.
It's the Filipino one, right?
Are we talking about the Filipino one?
I think it's the Filipino camo P26 that's hidden.
Because isn't there the other hidden P26 that you can actually see on the folder on the American Tech Tree, the green one, but it's not there if you open up the folder?
I think a lot of vehicles have that. Or a lot of bigger ones, because I was looking at the year 2s earlier, and there's a year 2 with like a brownie colored camo, but it's not actually in the folder.
Yep. Well, this one basically, I can actually affirm this one is not existing in the game. You can have it right now. This green one. I agree with you. You have one which is green, and you can see it here, which doesn't exist anywhere. But it's not a plane you can actually get in game.
I see. Oh, okay. Well, that clears some things up then.
So you maybe, yeah, it is actually in the files. I agree, since someone was capable of data mining it. Data mining is bad. Remember that. That's it. And yeah, so it exists physically in the file, but you cannot actually use it in game.
Okay. So I think
It's like the C47 basically, or the Li2 when you do some single user missions.
or any
You can't-
plane camo
You
that
can't
you
fly
see.
them.
So I think there's a few planes that you can kind of browse down the folder, and there'll be a different color, but you can't actually get them. Especially in the Russian tree. Just looking at the year 2. There's one with a brownie colored camo, but you can't get that either.
Is it the green and brown or just straight brown?
It's green and brown.
That might be the 105 RTAT.
That might be.
What I think is funny is he lists the A26 C45 DT, which is the PS4 one. It's not hidden. It's just a PS4.
I was talking about the P26, not the A46.
No, I know. I'm talking about the fact that he lists it there as a hidden plane. It's not a hidden plane. It's just a PlayStation 4.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hidden to PC players for the most
Hidden to
part.
PC. Yeah, there you go.
You know, it's still not really hidden before, but I suppose you could class it as a vehicle. There's a few, I think Oxy did a video showing off, or he explained why vehicles were hidden and which ones they were. Like the Filipino P26 and to the old fiction vehicle. And it's like 2 hours long or something, if I recall.
only 2 hours long.
one of the longest War Thunder videos you can find on YouTube, probably. Maybe aside from the podcast that I upload. Although it's not really War Thunder, it's just more of a discussion than it is Thunder. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm gonna end the podcast here. I've got some bits and pieces I need to go do. Thanks for coming on, guys. Especially for Frying Tiger for taking time out of his busy work schedule to come talk about stuff and things.
Sure.
And Tiger for content creation and Rapitor for, tech stuff.
For being like a scarecrow for the game for today. No problem.
That's alright. And, you're always welcome back on. I usually give, like a week away, and then you can choose whether or not you want back on next time. I'm always rotating people in and out. So, for example, Frying Tiger could be in this week, off next week, come on the week after, and then in the week after I'll have, like, Fly Daily and someone else from the mod team in. Something like that. That's kind of how they go. And then, with enough support, I can, pester... Who was it that I was meant to pester about it? Was it Thul? Yeah, I can pester Thul about getting it onto the Thunder official channel. Because, I think it's something people would like to see a lot more of. It's just not really... I'm not the most popular War Thunder person, basically. But I'm trying to get it off the ground and going.
No, doing fine.
Yeah. But, yeah, thanks for hopping in, and I'll stay in touch.
Versus me, I'm used to just sitting here in the dark processing report.
Okay, I do that sometimes when I'm running through my in-game reports. But, oh well, anyway. I'll,
Yeah, talk to you later.